Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon. I'll say both good morning and good afternoon because if you are in Illinois, we should be hitting 12 o'clock lunchtime. So if you're in Illinois or anywhere else in the central time zone, good afternoon. And I am coming to you live from Boulder, Colorado, and it's 11 o'clock. So we're still on morning. So um, good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us. I'm going to wait just about a minute here or so, allow people to join us for this webinar today, talking about SOPPA compliance and the security practices available out there, some of the guidance, and I'll introduce my partner in today's session, Mr. Chris Wehrle, here momentarily. We'll get going, and looks like we're seeing people kind of come streaming in here now, seeing quite a few folks out there jumping on to get started. So we'll wait just a minute, just as a quick check. Chris, you can see the main screen. We're good to go there?
Yep.
Okay.
We're good to go.
All right. Well, we'll let a few more folks jump in here. I'm seeing some more folks join. Again, thank you everyone for joining us today. We're excited to have this opportunity to share some of this information and have an open conversation about it. So, alrighty, we're 1 minute past the hour, so we'll go ahead and get started. So if you are joining us today, you should be here for this joint webinar between the Learning Technology Center of Illinois and Managed Methods to achieve SOPPA compliance with reasonable security practices. So let's go ahead and kind of jump into it here. So today's agenda and what we're going to cover over the next 30 to 45 minutes or so is up here on the screen. We're going to start out basic introductions here, and then I'll introduce our friends here. For those of you that are not familiar with the Learning Technology Center of Illinois, we'll do some guidance and a refresher around SOPPA and what are some of the guidance and practices that the LTC is offering up. Then we'll talk about us here at Managed Methods, introduce ourselves. For those of you who are not familiar with us, I do see some of our customers out there in the attendance, so thanks for joining us. And then, how is it that we can help with SOPPA specifically, as well as in general across cybersecurity, student safety, data privacy, et cetera. And then, where you can get some more information. Today is meant to be informational, sharing. We'll make this presentation available to everyone that has registered for the event, whether you've been able to attend or not. And then, of course, if you need further information, you can contact today's presenters, Chris and myself. So with that said, why don't we go ahead and jump forward? I'm really excited, pleased to have our friend here with us today, Chris Wehrle from the Learning Technology Center. For those of you that are not familiar with Chris, I'm going to give a little introduction here. Chris is the Network and Technology Services Coordinator for the Learning Technology Center of Illinois, LTC. Prior to joining LTC, Chris was the Director of Technology at an Illinois K-12 public school district for over 20 years and gained a broad knowledge of technology, for things like G Suite, now called Google Workspace, of course, Chromebooks, iPads, network, wireless, voice over IP, you name it. Very, very well versed in the technology stacks out there. He also had to support classroom teachers in the use of technology, devices, application. And now in his role with the LTC, Chris helps identify and develop services and resources, provide technical consultation, support, lead, facilitate professional development, help with events like today to spread the word, and really help share all sorts of great information to Illinois school districts and schools. So Chris works out of the Sangamon-Menard Regional Office of Education, number 51 in the Springfield, Illinois area. And Chris, thank you for being here today. It's a pleasure. We really look forward to hearing from you and to have this partnership with the Learning Technology Center of Illinois.
I need to have David write my LinkedIn profile or update my resume for me. That sounded really good.
Hey, I'm just, somebody's doing it at the LTC for me. I'm just reading your bio.
All right. That sounds good. So yeah, thanks everybody. Good to see a lot of familiar names in the group. This is one area that reasonable security where we've maybe not talked as much about during the SOPPA conversations that we've had up to this point. So look forward to sharing that with you. For those of you that may be unfamiliar with the Learning Technology Center, the Learning Technology Centers have been around for around 25 years in some shape or form, different areas, but we're a state board of education program working with K-12 schools around technology. So just looking to support you, whether that's with professional development, the ILTPP program with cooperative purchasing, or all the things we do as services, supporting you with technology, supporting teachers and administrators with professional development. And we have cybersecurity there. Mindy, everybody knows Mindy Fiscus that does our connectivity and E-rate stuff. And so the cybersecurity and data privacy things are really our focus, and have been my focus for the 3 years that I've been with the LTC. Started out with cybersecurity, and then over the last year and a half with SOPPA coming around, data privacy has been a big focus this year. So as far as SOPPA and what people need to know about SOPPA, Dave, if you want, yeah, there you go, is, or SOPPA, however you want. I'll say it both ways so that I'll make friends with both sides of the SOPPA aisle there. And officially, I think it should be SOPPA, but I'm saying SOPPA. So that's kind of my stance at this point. We have lots of resources on this webpage that's linked here as far as what SOPPA is and background and conversations. And we have opportunities on a weekly basis to join us at the LTC to talk about all things SOPPA. So please join those conversations if you haven't, or haven't in a while. But the resources here really lay out what SOPPA is about. And the first one, the legislative brief, really kind of lines out the main things that we have to have written agreements with vendors that kind of cover all the things that they're doing with our data, what data they have, what services they're offering, those types of things, that we're posting those agreements on our website. And then one of the other things that we rarely talk about is the reasonable security practices. And that's one of those things that we're doing as needed, but it's probably one of those things we need to put into focus a little bit more. And so when David approached me for doing a presentation to get this, to talk about reasonable security practices, I thought it was a good idea to at least make sure that we reference those and talk about those, because again, it's one of those things we kind of gloss over in the all things SOPPA conversation. So this resource is available at our cybersecurity page on the LTC website, which over the last 5 or 6 hours has been going up and down because of some status with GoDaddy. So their hosting services have been up and down. So if you can't get to the website, please try again, because it's a temporary issue. But as far as the security practices that we are recommending, and the State Board of Education has officially, unofficially, I'm not really sure how official it is. I haven't seen it on their website yet, but they are wanting to recommend our guidance here. This is not something that the LTC invented. This is something that we took from the CIS controls. If you're not familiar with the CIS controls, definitely check those out. But we took from version 7.1, the implementation group 1. There's 43 subcontrols that are available within that guidance. And that guidance for implementation groups is based on the resources that you have and the cybersecurity expertise that you have. And so as the implementation groups go up, there's more resources, there's more expertise. So at implementation group 1, this is meant to be kind of covering all areas of security for small businesses, for schools, for anybody that's using technology in kind of a smaller environment that needs to worry about cybersecurity but doesn't have the full expertise or resources at their disposal. So if you look at the document that's available on this page, you'll see things like hardware and software inventory. You'll see things like having dedicated administrative accounts, which is one thing that I always did that, or didn't do, that I should have been doing, was I used my email address that I use for everything else as my super admin control in Google Admin, which not necessarily a good practice. Logging, knowing what's going on with your systems, having backups, knowing where your sensitive data is at. So knowing what is sensitive, what's not sensitive, what's needs to be protected, what you need to get back as soon as you can. A couple other things here that you'll notice on there that is kind of low hanging fruit, but it's really something that we probably don't necessarily do as best practice because there's other benefits to it. Locking workstations after inactivity is one of them that's on there. And then training is always going to be a big thing that we do with cybersecurity. So and there's a lot more, there's 43 subcontrols that are part of this document that are part of that baseline. As you look through the other 97 and 31 different subcontrols that are part of the other implementation groups, there's going to be things there too that you may see that you're already doing, but they're at that higher level. So just be aware that they're there for your guidance and for your guidelines, not necessarily there to grade you on your cybersecurity. But so as we are sharing those out, and like I said, when David came to me as far as the presentation for today, I thought it was a good idea to at least get these out in front of people as a way to educate people what's going on and what quote reasonable is. We could probably spend a lot of time sifting through all these and figuring out what's good, what's bad, and but we had to draw the line somewhere. And so at this point, I'll turn it over to David, and he can share kind of what his thoughts are as far as managed methods and other things with cybersecurity.
Thanks, Chris. And before we jump forward, first and foremost, I guess we'll ask everybody put in the chat, is it SOPPA or SOPPA? So we'll get a survey there and we'll figure it out today. But also, I just think it would be, valuable too, as a reminder. I think everybody knows this is happening officially July 1st, 2021, as if school districts didn't have enough to deal with over the past year with the pandemic. But we've also had a lot of districts reach out to us where people are still just now learning about this. So Chris, before I jump in, maybe if you could real quick, just what at the high level is a school having to do, just if you were to put it into just a short paragraph, what is the high level that a school has to do to comply with SOPPA, SOPPA?
So right now, the main thing and what most people are focused on is the agreements on their websites. So getting a data privacy agreement with a vendor that shows how the data is being used, what data is being used, and having those signed agreements posted on their website. And we're offering that up as a solution through the Student Data Privacy Consortium, and through an Illinois State Alliance that the LTCs paid the membership for. So all school districts in Illinois can use that database without any cost. So they can upload their agreements, sign on to the originating agreements in a piggybacking fashion. And then once all that stuff's in the database, there's actually a resource listing that they can link to on their website that would fit that need for everything. There's some other things as far as like posting of data breaches when those happen and stuff, but that's not the priority right now. But the management of agreements and having those posted and available for community and for parents and for staff. So, and
correct me if I'm wrong, as we are fairly versed in this new law, the burden initially is really on the district themselves first and foremost, and then they have to engage with us vendors like we ManagedMethods are members of the National Student Data Privacy Consortium, as well as the Illinois component of it, because we have accepted and signed agreements with our school district customers in Illinois. So we have to comply, but the burden is of getting all of this information gathered and posting it right now is on the districts themselves, right?
Right.
Because I had a new customer that is just coming on board with us in Illinois ask us, hey, are you SOPPA compliant. And I had to explain to them, because this individual is brand new as a technology coordinator at this district. And we had to explain that, well, there's not a certification program for us to go through. Our requirement as a vendor is to sign these privacy agreements, whether it be in the state, nationally, et cetera. So thank you for sharing that. Well, this is again great information, lots of resources on these 2 slides that we just shared with you. Of course, all this will be made available, because we'll share this presentation deck out to all participants. You feel free to share it with any of your friends, as well as you can reach out to Chris to get more information. Well, let's just jump into who we are. Just a little bit. First, I'll introduce myself. My name is David Waugh. I'm one of the founding team members here at ManagedMethods. I'm responsible for the sales and customer service side of things here at ManagedMethods. But I am an Illinois guy. So I know many of the district names out there. Chris and I have had some fun, because I did have some of my best ever basketball games on the Williamsville basketball court there. I grew up just outside of Decatur. I went to a school district that no longer exists in its original form, called Nyack-Harristown. It is now called Sangamon Valley Community Unit School District number 9. And then I went on to Illinois State University, where I was a proud Redbird. If you can't tell, I shaved my head. There's some gray there. That was a long time ago. So, Chris, you got me by about, I think, 8 months. So, but yes, I walked the cornfields. I know what detasseling and bean walking is. I did all that growing up. So many fond memories in Illinois. So let's talk about who ManagedMethods is. ManagedMethods is a cybersecurity, student safety, and compliance platform designed specifically to help school districts address security and compliance and safety within the main communication and collaboration platforms: Google Workspace, Microsoft, Zoom, Slack, other things that are prevalently used now within school communities. We are a dedicated education company. A little bit of our footprint is, we've had our product in the market since the spring of 2017. We're protecting over 1,300 plus schools around North America. We do have a few customers in the UK and Australia. As we put our product into the market in 2014, we've seen great growth over the past several years, but explosive growth over the past just year because of the pandemic. We are tight partners in the Google Cloud and Google Education, as well as Microsoft Education Partner Programs. And, as Chris mentioned, we are members of the Student Data Privacy Consortium. We work with the Resource Registry, which is one of those database services that Chris referenced, with a collection of schools' privacy contracts and agreements. And we have gone through all the certifications to stay in compliance with FERPA, COPPA, all the national laws, as well as state and local privacy laws. Just a little more personal on our organization. We are a small company. We're privately held. We're based in Boulder, Colorado, right at the foothills of the Rocky Mountains, just down the street from the University of Colorado at Boulder. We have dedicated US-based customer success, technical support teams. We're not quite 40 employees just yet. We're just shy of that, but we will be very soon, because we're hiring. So anyone wants to live in Boulder, Colorado, or be involved with cybersecurity in schools, let me know. And this is a really passionate thing that we're doing here, because, speaking for myself, I'm a parent with 2 school-age children. I have a 10-year-old little girl who's, I think, going on 16, but she's 10 years old and in 4th grade, reminding me she's going to be 5th grade now. Today's the last day of school out here. My son is just completing his freshman year, his 9th grade year. He's getting his learner's permit on Monday, or not Monday, Tuesday, June 1st. Scary. But it's a very sensitive topic for all of us, because my spouse is a elementary education professional. Some of our team members also have school-age children. A couple of our team members have parents who are lifelong educators. So it's a very, very important, serious topic for us here, and we take this very seriously, and we're happy to be here today to talk about this. So let's talk about this topic, and as it relates to SOPPA and where we got to, or SOPPA, is, believe it or not, still a lot of people ask me, do they really need to spend all this time and attention on addressing cybersecurity in schools? And the answer is, you better believe it. And why is it? Why is it that school districts, why are so many of you here listening to these conversations and involved in this? Is because resources are strained. We already know that in the education community. There's not enough resources, whether it be budgets, whether it be tools and technology, whether it be cybersecurity expertise, whether it be, IT staff members. Many of districts that I work with In Illinois, they're a whopping staff of 1, 2, 3, because the person that's the technology coordinator might also be double duty as instructional technology, and they're also the football coach. We see all of it. So there's limited resources. So those resources are strained even long before the pandemic. And then the norms of the culture of education is open and sharing, making everything accessible, and public information needs to be accessible. But data privacy understanding gaps then sometimes come into play. And then many a times staff are just not as tech savvy on security as maybe they need to be, because, well, remember, first and foremost, a lot of folks in the schools are educators and they're focused on that. And then technology change, of course, is a hard thing. And we saw that this past year with the pandemic, where more technology was implemented over the past year and a half or so than ever before. And it caused some challenges in there. And because of that, though, we have seen the education community move into the top 5 most targeted area for cyber attacks over the past 4 or 5 years. A great resource, if you're not familiar with it, is go visit our friends at the K-12 Cybersecurity Resource Center. And they publish a map and all sorts of data points and research around cybersecurity incidents within the school communities. And just since 2016, over the past 4 or 5 years, there's been nearly 1,200 publicly disclosed incidents. And the key word there is the publicly disclosed. There's hundreds and hundreds more that never get reported. Over the past year during the pandemic, there was over 400 new reported incidents, nearly a 20% increase from 2019 to 2020 during the pandemic time, because of all the new technology that made schools vulnerable. And of that, 36% of those incidents resulted in student or staff information during that data breach, data leak. Now, here's where it's going to apply heavily to SOPPA or SOPPA. Nearly 75% of all the data breach incidents over the past 2 years in K-12 involved district technology vendors or vendors that have access to district data. So remember that. That's over 75% of all of these incidents in the past 2 years involved folks like us that have, involvement with the district. Now, our job is to protect that, and we can talk about how we do that. But this is why SOPPA is coming to play, because you need to know who are the vendors, who are the partners, who outside of the district has access to the data. And that data is extremely valuable. I get asked questions, some of my friends will, David, why is it that school districts are so targeted? They don't really have that much money. Well, it's not about the money so much. It's about the data that's there. So if you think about it, how many kiddos out there under the age of 18 have had their personal credentials used to apply for a loan, a mortgage, a credit card, to go buy a car? No, none, because it's just not there. And so that information becomes extremely valuable. Examples you can go out and find, you can Google news stories, you can read about it. A student social security number can sell on the dark web upwards of 25, 35 or more. So if a hacker can get access to even a small school and grab 500 to 1,000, kiddos' information with their first name, last name, date of birth, social security number, it's a treasure trove. But hackers are also very successful at attacking the staff, and the staff is vulnerable. We did a webinar a couple, weeks back, about a month ago now, where the technology director was telling a story about how the superintendent's secretary had been a victim of one of these attacks and was sending money via ACH wire transfer through this phishing ransomware attack. So this is a big issue that's just increasing, and this is where SOPPA is one of these many types of rules in place to help districts and the public understand that, hey, this is serious. We got to protect the data, and we have to understand and know who has access to the data. So let's talk about how we address this here at Managed Methods. Managed Methods, we're focused on really 3 kind of core areas or use cases. And those 3 core areas and use cases really need to be kind of clarified and defined, because sometimes I think people get confused. Today we're talking heavily about compliance because of SOPPA. But when we look at what leads up to this, it's going to be cyber security and cyber safety, because cybersecurity is talking about protecting the technology systems, the applications, and all of the data that resides within those systems. Cyber safety is about protecting the physical, emotional well-being of the students, staff members, et cetera, who are using those systems. And as we all know, too many times within phishing, ransomware, in some of these areas, you can see news stories where those two lines have blurred, where the cyber security attack was also heavily on the cyber safety side, where they were making threats. If you don't pay this ransomware, we will do this. And it's sad, it's unfortunate, but it is something that commonly occurs. So these three things really kind of go hand in hand: cybersecurity, cyber safety, and the compliance side of things. Because in order to address all of those three areas, school districts need to address and adopt multi-layer security approaches. When you look at the guidance, the reasonable security practices that Chris just was referencing in the CIS controls, you cannot accomplish those easy for me to say, accomplish those items with just one of these areas. You have to have a multi-layered approach. And Chris, obviously, you're very well versed in this, and many of our audiences, a lot of districts out there have maybe the infrastructure, maybe the network, maybe they've got the endpoint going now. But it's been only within the past, say, 4 or 5 years that these top two layers of identity access, multi-factor authentication, two-factor, and cloud layers have really become prevalent. I had a superintendent from a district tell me, hey, David, please help me understand this, because we've got a firewall and we have a content filter in place. Aren't we covered? Aren't we good to go? But as we addressed all these areas, and he attended this presentation I had given at this conference, it was very, very clear to him that, okay, I understand what my technology team is asking me for. So we have to make sure that we're addressing all of these different layers. Just so you know where we fit in Managed Methods, we're at that cloud layer, focused specifically at that layer, and we'll talk about that momentarily. So what we're specifically trying to help districts with, and we are not alone, there are other vendors out there that do this as well, but what we sit down with many districts in our audits, and we help them understand, what's happening, is these types of questions that I have on the screen here. If you cannot readily and easily answer these questions, then you have to stop and say, okay, why is that? And address and look at my technology stack and where we are. In the past year with the pandemic, a lot of this became exposed, and more of this information became more obvious. More technologies such as Zoom, Microsoft Teams, Google Meet, like we're in right now, these types of things were not used, really, heavily prior to the pandemic. But I think they will be even after we get through this. They have opened up new avenues for how we can communicate and share information. I know here in the state of Colorado, I don't think there's ever going to be anything called a snow day anymore, because now we can just get all the kiddos online rather quickly. But if you can't readily and easily answer, what does my external file sharing look like? Who has access? Third-party vendors, where it's coming from? Is it being shared internally, externally? Are there violations potentially at play? When we talk about third-party applications, do we know who are all the vendors that have access to our information? Chris, you talked about that. Just because a district might publish a list of all of the approved and vetted and signed contracts that they have, say, in their student data privacy database, we have seen in many, many incidents, even with our own customers in the state of Illinois, where the privacy folks have come forth and said, hey, we're good to go with SOPPA. Here's a list of 152 vendors that we have the agreements with. Let's put this up on the website. But yet our product was able to show them that there was over 400 third-party applications that had access to the domain, Google and or Microsoft. So there's a lot of investigation that still needs to be done. So why is this compounding? Why did this happen? And I kind of talked about this a little bit earlier. Schools were already behind the curve prior to the pandemic sweeping in. They were already dealing with a lot of legacy and older approaches, and it's not that they're necessarily bad. It's just a lot of school technology and security technology was designed for campus-based life, and legacy network security controls focused really on a perimeter, only if you were in the physical building, either plugged in or on a secure Wi-Fi. Firewalls, IDS, IPS, endpoints, et cetera, valuable technology. Not saying you shouldn't have them. That's why we had that stack listed earlier. You definitely need to have all these areas covered, but they're only designed to protect a certain area or a component of that. And so then when new technologies were brought in, whether it be now schools are using more file sharing through Google Drive or Microsoft OneDrive, SharePoint, Teams, you name it. Maybe they're using video conferencing, Meet, Teams, WebEx, Zoom, et cetera. All of these things now were basically invisible. The legacy network-based technology was blind to these types of things because they didn't have that in their design pattern. They were not architected and designed to do those types of things. So access from outside of traditional campuses, new technology, one-to-one, new devices, all of these types of things change the methods in which schools have to say, okay, how do we address this? How do we go about it? So let's talk specifically about those guidance, reasonable security practices that Chris talked about. we at Managed Methods sat down and we analyzed this with not only our customers, but looked at the guidance being provided by the LTC and some other third parties out there. And we have, gone through each component of it, and we can help schools achieve compliance with over 30% of the components right out of the box with our product. Dealing with, software assets and understanding what third-party software applications have been granted permission to district credentials or are being used, whether they're being licensed or not. The ability to maintain and monitor ongoing usage and have those logs to be able to audit this, to protect against malware coming in through email, protect against phishing attacks in email, provide these layers of data protection. All of these things are right out of the box with the Managed Methods platform, and we're already helping many districts in the state of Illinois. And we've had districts tell us, hey, this is perfect timing because you were already with us. The SOPPA thing came along, and we're definitely armed and ready to take this on. So we went through the 43 best practices, and we are aligned with over 30% of those components, again, right out of the box. As I mentioned earlier, we're focused specifically on Google Workspace, Microsoft Education, Zoom, Slack, Dropbox, obviously with Google and Microsoft being the two most prevalently used communication tools within school districts today. We are focused on monitoring 24/7 what's happening in these environments with a 100% cloud-based solution. There's no software that you install in your district. You don't have to download a virtual appliance or install an appliance on premise. There's no agents or extensions or plugins. Again, it's 100% cloud-based. We work directly into these cloud applications. It's very easy to deploy and implement, very easy to maintain. Once we have implemented this monitoring and auditing, we then can apply data security and privacy rules. We have arguably one of the industry's most advanced data loss prevention and content inspection engines for the education community. By doing all of those components to set alerts and set rules and revoke privileges and send alerts and notifications, we also can do that with advanced threat protection. So advanced malware protection on your emails, phishing protection on emails, looking at any objects that get uploaded and shared into your OneDrive or Google Drive, and be able to give you full visibility and protect you against those. And last but not least, arguably probably the thing that's most near and dear to my heart is our safety signals technology, which is one of the most advanced artificial intelligence machine learning technologies to analyze data for potential self-harm, cyberbullying, threats to others, threats to oneself, violence, discrimination, cyberbullying, explicit content, you name it. And that's a vital and crucial component to what we are providing to districts out there today. So why do school districts partner with us here at Managed Methods is really, it boils into user experience, their entire experience using our product, how easy and intuitive it is to use. You don't have to be a cybersecurity expert or even a hardcore technology expert. You could be a principal, a counselor, a social worker in the district and take advantage of our platform. It can be used real quickly and right out of the box. Plus, we provide top-notch customer service and ongoing training. It's all inclusive. It's all provided with our product. The visibility we provide is extremely granular and very, very powerful. Our customers always tell us, you show me stuff that I didn't know existed. We have a lot of popular quotes from our customers where they'll say, you won't believe what you're missing out on until you bring in the Managed Methods product. And then, of course, that last item I had just talked about, the student safety signals, combining all that we can do around cybersecurity and data privacy, but also giving this option for schools to dive in and look at protecting the human aspect. And it's not just students. Obviously, that's the main audience that's out there because of just the ratios. But during the pandemic, we had districts reach out to us that use our product and tell us, hey, thank you. Your safety signals helped us intervene with a staff member that was dealing with a very tough time, loss of a loved one during the pandemic, and as well as isolation, living in a rural area and remotely teaching. Because you've got to remember, our teachers, we're not, the kids weren't the only ones that were being isolated and having to do, say, virtual schooling. The teachers were as well. So we can help in all of those facets. We are a growing organization. We're not necessarily a household name there in the state of Illinois, but we are growing. We have, like I said, over 1,300 and growing schools around the United States. We do work with school districts in the state of Illinois now, and we're adding more as we speak. There's one of those comments I jokingly said a minute ago. My aha moment, Diana Gill, who was former director of technology at a school district in northern Indiana, and now she's moved on and starting a new career with the state of Indiana Department of Education. We constantly have quotes from customers that talk about this. And even some of these school districts in Illinois that we are now helping with comply with SOPPA have said, hey, you helped open our eyes to situations where, again, the privacy people thought we had only like 150 coming out of the approved contracts, and our product showed well over 400 third-party apps, vendors that have access to data. So where do we go from here? Well, first and foremost, we want to open it up to some Q&A and hear from our audience, and I'll get into addressing those because I see some of those popping up. Of course, there is a wealth of information. Chris is a great resource. The Learning Technology Center of Illinois, outstanding resource. So they're, of course, available. We are here to help as well. Again, my name is David. You can send an email directly to me, and there's my email, dwa@managedmethods.com, or you can go to managedmethods.com. You can get a free trial. There's a lot of great information, resources you can read about if you want to schedule a demo, if you want to learn more. And we've had some people ask, how do we, purchase your product? Well, we're in the process of becoming a member of the ILTP. Stay tuned. We're doing paperwork right now. We're trying to get that set up. That we're new to that organization, but that will help pave the way because, again, the Learning Technology Center is a great resource. And we work with a variety of resellers, regional and national as well. So easy information if you want to learn more about that. Either reach out to Chris, reach out to us, go to managedmethods.com, etc. So with that said, I'm looking at the clock, trying to be courteous of time, but also I'm seeing some information being popped up in the questions. So Chris, I think some of these may be for you, be for me. Okay, looks like we got some people. I'm seeing one that says it's SOPPA. Well, it just says SOPPA. I'm seeing another one that put kind of a phonetic, like a phonetical pronunciation, right? Like it's SOPPA. I like saying, yeah, it's SOPPA, but I'm with you. I say SOPPA, even though it doesn't have the A before the P. Let's see here. Is there a spreadsheet where we can reference of vendors with their data privacy agreements, or is it specific to each district?
Yeah, so I reached back out to Teresa on that,
Okay.
but it was ultimately, if you go to the ISPA website, which is the Illinois Student Privacy Alliance, so that's our access into the Student Data Privacy Consortium database. All agreements, all information can pretty much be put into an Excel spreadsheet or a Google Sheets spreadsheet for data analysis, or if you've got some good Google Flu skills, you can definitely parse out information that is important to you. The database is fully searchable on a public basis. So you can see what other schools have, what other resources have data privacy agreements, all those types of things. And just another kind of a comment just on what David was saying with, and I've not actually seen too much of Managed Methods and what it's capable of, but just that whole idea of what SOPPA's brought to the attention of school districts with the number of apps that we're using. In a lot of conversations that we've had over the last several weeks, it's been questions about, well, what about this app and what about that app? And ultimately, there are concerns about whether or not we need to get agreements with apps, but ultimately what we're doing is bringing to light that we're putting out a lot of student information into different sites and different applications. And it's a lot different than setting up an application on a server inside your school. Now it's out and about and in the cloud and those types of things. So definitely knowing about those has been a bright spot in the whole SOPPA conversation, is bringing to light all of those applications that we knew there was a lot, but did we really know how many there were and what we're doing with them and those types of things? So
yeah, it's a very alarming topic, especially over the past year. Because of the pandemic, we saw an explosion in the number of apps that were being used inside of school districts, and it was already large, Chris, prior to that. But the other challenge that happens is people connect things on their personal time using their district credentials because they get either in a hurry or they forget, or we have some folks that will tell us, well, this is the only email account I have, and schools need to be more diligent about making sure that it's only district business and it's all been vetted out. We know that even those vendors that you have a signed agreement with, make sure you understand what permissions, privileges, et cetera, they need to have. There is a question here. Are we allowed to share student information with colleges and or the military without an agreement in place? Good question, Chris.
Yeah, and I think that really falls under, we've been doing that for years, and I think it falls under some other, I think it falls under FERPA or one of those other laws with regards to student data, student directory information. And so it's not necessarily a data privacy agreement that you would have to share that information. It's a media release or permission by the parents or something else along those lines. So that's not necessarily an issue.
Okay. I see another question here. What, if any, are the consequences for non-compliance?
Yeah, that question was brought up in a Robin Schwartz legal presentation that they did last week, and it's ultimately up to the Attorney General of the state of Illinois, and it has something to do with the Commercial Fraud Act. I don't know if I got that exactly right, but it's probably going to be more reputation than it is anything else. And that goes a long ways besides the whole legal issue and liability issues and all that stuff that goes along with it. So I don't think we're fully clear on what all the consequences are at this point, but I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah. Is there bark and no teeth, or is it just bark? Yeah, that's always a question that comes up with these legislative acts. Another question that popped in here. Is there a link to this presentation or recording? Yes, it's going to be made available. I think we could try, Chris, maybe we can work with you as well and maybe get a copy of it over to you. Maybe It can be available on the LTC website. It will be available on our website, plus anyone that has registered for this. And if you are here in attendance today, you have registered, you will be receiving an email soon with the access to the webinar and the recording. So yes, we'll make those things available. Another question that popped in, and we'll take a couple more here and then wrap up. Why should we worry about apps and the data cybersecurity, ramifications, kind of question mark there? Well, third-party apps that have access to your, say, Google workspace or your Microsoft 365 domain, in many cases, and our product analyzes this, we will show you what the access levels or permissions or scope of permissions that they have. And many, many, many of these applications that you install, whether you're installing them on a Chromebook or a PC or a Mac, or you're doing on a tablet, a personal device, whether it's a Chrome OS tablet, a Mac OS, whatever, iPads, they do what's called an OAuth token exchange. And that's how they all happen so seamlessly and quick. You're not seamlessly installing anything, but it may put an extension on the browser, or it may just exchange a token with your environment. And sometimes, well, albeit not sometimes, but a lot of times app developers are developing things to be efficient, not thinking about security. And so they could have access to read, write, send, and delete emails on this individual's behalf, or access to your Google Drive or shared drive, permissions to maybe just read, write. Sometimes it's edit, sometimes it's download, share. So you need to have full visibility into these things and understand it. Even if you have a signed DPA with them, if you don't understand this, and our customers do this all the time, yeah, great, we have a signed DPA, but just because we have a DPA, is that vendor, complying with what the DPA says? Or do we know that, wow, we signed a DPA with this vendor, but did we know that they have all this access? And that's part of the effort we're doing with the Student Data Privacy Consortium and other privacy groups we work with, trying to help bring this conversation, because there's that other side of the coin. You have data privacy from the legal compliance perspective, then you have data privacy from the cybersecurity perspective. So it's important that you have that granular visibility and the know-how. Another question that came up here, and maybe this will be our last one for the day to wrap up. Any applications that even allow students to create an account with their school issued email needs to have a DPA with them, question mark. And I believe the answer is yes. If it's an application based on how I understand SOPPA or SOPPA, if it's a third-party application, meaning it's from a vendor, a software vendor out there, or any vendor that has access to even one student information, correct, Chris? They are supposed to have a DPA, and it's supposed to be then publicly made available for review.
Yeah. The only caveat that it keeps coming up is that ultimately we're going to have to parse this on a case-by-case basis or an app-by-app basis, is that it's intended for K-12 use. And that just opens up a whole can of worms to me, that if we're going to try to parse whether or not their intentions are K-12 or not K-12, like ultimately what we're doing is saying that if they're not K-12, we're not worried about if they're putting student information out there. But if they are K-12, then we are worried about it. And so ultimately, kind of going back to that question about why should we worry about apps and data and cybersecurity. I read a book by Lynette Attai about a year ago, or actually it's about 2 years ago now. And she goes around speaking about data privacy issues and works with COSIN and the trusted learning environment and different things like that. And she says it's the right thing to do. Like, we can look at all these laws and we can look at SOPPA and we can look at FERPA and all these other things. But when it comes right down to it, we need to protect our students. We need to protect what they're doing. And so does every application have to have a DPA? No, not necessarily. Should it? At some level, we should at least be concerned about it and know that it should be listed somewhere. Whether or not we have to have a DPA, like that's that next question that ultimately a lawyer is going to answer that question. But
yeah, I think Chris, I think that's a good way to finish that right there.
Exactly.
With everything, folks, I think what Chris and I hope to accomplish today is really information sharing. I think a lot of you are, first and foremost, I commend you. If you're here for this, it means you're on top of things. You're trying to understand. You may already have these things battened up. You may not yet. It's all about, understanding, knowledge, and making sure that we're at least on top of these things. But ultimately, at the end of the day, each district should consult with your district legal advisory, legal counsel. The Learning Technology Center, Chris, and their organization are here to support. It's a great, valuable resource there for you in the state of Illinois. There's a lot of other resources. I know that, Chris, you and the LTC have been on top of this, so there's a wealth of information that's available on your website, as well as we'll be sharing this deck out to everyone. If you want to further investigate what's happening inside of your Google Workspace, Microsoft for education, your Zoom environments, feel free to visit ManagedMethods.com. We offer up a free 30-day trial of our product, which comes with complimentary audits of your environments, where we'll help you uncover and explore and know what you have there. We are arguably one of the fastest growing players in this space. We are dedicated to the education market, and we're here to help. And if you want to take advantage of our free trial, or if you just even want to see a demonstration and ask more questions and understand, feel free to reach out to us at ManagedMethods.com. Again, we'll make a copy of this presentation available to everyone. It'll be posted on our website soon, but we'll also be emailing it out, and then we'll make sure we get a copy to Chris. I'm showing 53 minutes now that we've been at this, so I think it's time to maybe wrap it up. Chris?
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah,
Hope you had a good lunch hour.
Yes, hope you had. I'm going to get something to eat now. That's a good call. So thank you very much, everyone out in Illinois and anywhere else you may be listening. Chris and the Learning Technology Center, we appreciate. Thank you very much for your assistance, and we wish everyone a great and happy and safe day. And for those of you that are in your final week of school, whether you got out yesterday, today, tomorrow, hey, we celebrate. You did it. We made it through arguably probably the hardest school year that I think we'll ever know. So thank you, folks. Have a great day.
All right. Take care.